Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're doing a webinar training on how to, welcome to our webinar training, excuse me, and we're doing a training, a web clinic on how to enhance your patient care and increase your practice revenue utilizing sleep apnea and dental sleep therapy. So I want to get started. I'm going to show you my screens. This is the last time you'll see me. I'm going to go ahead and log into my screen here, and we're going to get over to our presentation. Let's go with the entire screen. You're going to see it go crazy for a sec here. There we go. And we'll go right into, we'll hide this. Perfect. So this is our webinar. If you can't hear me, or if you can't see me, if you can't hear me, you'd never see this or hear this. But if you can't see me, if for some reason something's going wrong, please feel free, just drop us an email. If you've logged in, we will send you a replay. Okay, so if for some reason you can't log or can't see the screen, we will send you a replay, and we'll stop periodically and answer questions, but mostly what we'd like to do is save our questions for the end. So with that, I'm Rob Breedlove. Welcome. Let's get started. I hope your day's going well. So today, apnea, changing your patients' lives and enhancing your practice. That's what we want to talk about. Patients, I went and I actually spoke to a bunch of dentists yesterday, and one of the dentists brought up the fact that when you treat in dentistry, you're really you're adding a great level of care to patients, all your patients. But when you treat sleep apnea with oral appliance therapy, you're actually saving lives. Saving lives. Now we'll talk to you more about saving lives and saving marriages and saving jobs and reducing accidents and so forth. But so that's the beauty of treating sleep apnea in the dental practice, is you get this sort of like the ultimate level of care because you're saving lives and you're also increasing your practice revenue. You can see here with just a few amount of patients daily, the amount of revenue that can be generated per case is far outweighing most of the things you can do in your practice. Okay, so with that, let's get started. When we change lives, the dentists that I talk to, they all want to know, who is this web clinic for? Who's this webinar for? Great. If you're a dentist, this applies to you. If you're an orthodontist, if you're a periodontist, if you're a prosthodontist, an implantologist, you name it. I even yesterday, a pediatric dentist came up to me and she said, I need this. Okay, so it applies to you. Now, let's talk about all of you dentists, no matter what kind of dentistry you are in. If you have patients that you're treating, this applies to you. But if also, are you someone that wants to treat larger conditions in your practice? If you want to stop drilling and filling so much and start treating more of the larger conditions, this is for you. What if you, I mean, this is also, you'll be able to get a lot out of this if you just want to add another service to your practice. You see your patients and you notice that if you had more services that you could help them more, then this is something you want to watch. Also, excuse me, if you want to increase your net income, this is a webinar you're going to want to take notes on and watch, and it's for you. If this may sound really funny, if you've been having increasing back pain, then this webinar is for you. This is a webinar for you. If you know anything about sleep apnea and treating it, and maybe you do or don't, when you treat sleep apnea, you're standing straight up. In fact, a lot of the time, your assistants are doing most of the work, and you're just overseeing. And then also, lastly, if you recognize the consequences of sleep apnea, you're definitely going to want to watch this webinar. It's going to be something that's going to lead you to a great opportunity. Let me tell you what led me to this webinar. Now, this right here, this is myself. This is Marshall. We work together. Marshall is running this webinar with Reveal Solutions. This is me on the left, Marshall on the right. We're family men, and we came about wanting to do this webinar, this web clinic for dentists, because A few years back, I worked with a company that claimed they helped dentists, and they charged outrageous amounts of money to get dentists, and they signed them up and to teach these dentists to treat sleep apnea, and it was a little more than barely a help, if you ask me. Okay, and I saw that and I thought, no, dentists need more. There's scientific training all over. You can get it anywhere and everywhere now. Scientific training of sleep apnea and how a dentist needs to be protruding the jaw and doing that. We're not going to focus on that so much. We wanted to help the dentist because the business aspect tends to drive dentists and their staff crazy. That's what led us to this webinar. And also, lastly, the huge opportunity that's available. Okay, let me give you a little overview. This right here is sleep apnea. Okay, you can see the obstruction in the back of the throat there. Really what's happening is the soft tissue in the back of your throat and your tongue collapse. And they come together to block off your airway, and it is a medical disorder. What happens is you stop breathing. Now, to be called an apneic event, it has to happen for 10 seconds or longer. Okay, so when you get that tongue and the soft tissue closing off, you actually stop breathing. The two main problems: one, no air. That's never good. I always tell patients in the dentist's office, if you don't have a problem with oxygen, then don't worry about sleep apnea. Okay, but the other thing is the REM interruption. Oh my gosh, you want to mess up someone's life? Screw up their sleep. And that is exactly what sleep apnea does. It pulls you out of REM way too soon, way too often, messes with your sleep, and it really frustrates people. Now, let's talk about, where do you see sleep apnea? Do you see morbidly obese patients? Did you know 9.5? I don't think you can have 9.5 people, but 9.5 times out of 10, they have sleep apnea. Hypertension. Do you know what that is? That's high blood pressure. You probably all know that. 83% of the time. Obesity, type 2 diabetes, ADD, ADHD. Oh my goodness. Depression, hypertension. You guys, you see these in your practice. This is a typical patient here. And apnea ruins their quality of life. It ruins it. It causes fatigue and depression. It causes weight gain. And it also, you want ADD and ADHD in children? Talk about poor concentration. Sleep apnea, if kids have sleep apnea, it's worse than ADD, ADHD. And then the problem is the doctors are diagnosing ADD and ADHD and giving them medication, which makes it even worse. Ultimately, what happens is you get increased sickness, and then the increased sickness just leads to everything happening even worse. Now, like I said earlier, you get to save their life. Throw them a lifeline. Sleep oral appliance therapy saves lives. Less heart failure. Lower their blood pressure. I have one dentist that told me he had patients that physically told him, hey, I've been able to lessen my blood pressure medication because of this. Diabetes, heart attack, stroke, arrhythmia, obesity. You can help with all of these things. While saving these lives, though, you can also increase your practice revenue. I put this on here. This is an EOB, an explanation of benefits from, yes, medical insurance. Medical insurance, not dental, okay? You're going to go to courses out there, and they're going to tell you one thing, they're going to tell you another. The majority, not all, but the majority of medical insurances cover or patients. They may have guidelines, they may have stipulations, but the majority of them cover it. This particular insurance paid this dentist for a whole therapy event. You can see down at the bottom there in yellow. The dentist got $11,316.50. That's why I titled the web clinic what it is: how to make $11,316.50 from just one sleep patient. But we didn't want to focus on the money. The money naturally comes when you help these patients. But if you don't know how to take advantage, not take advantage, but to go after it and get it, it doesn't come that easily. So we want to talk about that. Do you want to be a dentist that gets paid $11,316.50 from one sleep patient? I know every dentist out there is looking for extras. Here's another one. This dentist, interesting enough, this dentist called me while I was on vacation. It was great. I was at the beach. I get this phone call, and I said, "Hey, Mark, how can I help you?" And he says, "Rob, I got paid. I got a check from the insurance, and I think it's a mistake." And I said, "Okay, email it over to me." This is what the EOB said. They paid him $9,500 for the oral appliance. You can see, I don't know if you can see my arrow here, but the first orange or highlighted yellow number, E0486, that's the oral appliance code. Okay. He got paid that. And then he also got paid for an office visit. And then I don't know what the other thing is, but $9,829. Okay. He got paid for oral appliance therapy. So I'm telling you, awesome. Here's another one. You want to see another one? This may be more realistic for you. 3,000. What is that? 3,705 plus $235. So $3,945. Let's call it that. Here's another one. $4,303.26 from one patient. You guys, from one patient. So let's talk about it. This guy, I know he looks quite young, and he doesn't look old enough to be killed by sleep apnea, but he was killed by sleep apnea. And I'm not talking about the guy on the left. We're talking about the guy on the right, Reggie White, NFL pro football player. Okay. Now let's get into the 3 steps of oral appliance therapy, treating sleep apnea with a dental sleep device. Okay. The first step is, what you're going to do is you're going to identify at-risk patients. Now, please grab your pens and papers, because these are the steps. If you want to know how to do this, write these down. Okay? So identify at-risk patients. Now, why do you want to identify them? And let me tell you a little story. I had a dentist tell me that he had this young girl come into his practice. She was 21 years old. Maybe she was 26, actually. Sorry. I'm not trying to lead you straight here. I'm trying to get the story correct, but I think she was 26 years old, weighed 121 pounds. That's where I got the 21 from. And she was failing her college classes. She couldn't stay awake. She was putting everybody on the road at risk. And he tested her for sleep apnea. 45 events per hour. 45 times per hour, she stopped breathing. And remember, each event is 10 seconds long. The reason I tell you that is because through our research, we found that 1 out of every 5 people has sleep apnea. And the ones that have it, 9 times out of 10, they go undiagnosed. You can help this. If you start identifying patients, you can help them. You can take away the symptoms. Snoring, we can help with the oral appliance, gasping in their sleep, teeth grinding. Did you know from the research that we've done? Now, this isn't we're not an official research group or anything, but 70% of those that grind their teeth, we have found, have sleep apnea. How many of your patients grind their teeth? Dry mouth or sore throat, morning headaches, insomnia, daytime sleepiness, chronic fatigue, attention problems, overweight, irritability, depression. Guys, I know, as dentists, I know you see this in your practice. I talk to dentists all the time that they hear snoring, they hear gasping in their sleep, they hear all kinds of stuff going on in their practice, and they don't know, they talk to the patient, it's a joke, it's a laugh, oh my gosh, you snored. And the patient says, yeah, I snore all the time. It was good to be in the chair. I love my time in the chair with you, doc. Okay? But the truth is, if they're a heavy snorer, 80% of the time, it's because of sleep apnea. Snoring doesn't mean they have sleep apnea, but snoring, you guys, listen, it's starting to close already, and that's where you get the sound. That's where you get it from. And of course, gasping in their sleep. teeth grinding, do you know? So what we have found that when they grind, when they have the sleep apnea and they have grinding at the same time, it's because their body's doing whatever it can to get that airway open. I know you see these things. So one question that when you're identifying patients, one question I get asked all the time is, why would my patient go to a dentist for sleep apnea? Because they won't wear the mask. Okay. And remember, 90% of the time, if they have sleep apnea, it's going undiagnosed. Undiagnosed. Do you know what that means? Undiagnosed. That means if 1 out of every 5 has sleep apnea, okay, if 1 out of every 5 patients has sleep apnea, if you see 15 patients a day, 3 of them have sleep apnea, but 12 of them have the risk for sleep apnea. And that's why you got to identify them. And when you identify them, you can help them. You can save their life. You can save their marriage. You can save their job. You can save their car from getting into an accident. I mean, all kinds of things you can do for them. But you as a dentist, see a typical MD, and by the way, I don't mean to throw MDs under the bus. Actually, I love MDs, and I work with quite a few really good MDs. But the typical MD didn't learn that much about sleep apnea in medical school. I've been told it's anywhere from 45 minutes to a half of a day on sleep apnea training, which makes sense considering all the things they have to learn. Okay. So your typical MD, they start at the top of your head and they stop at the nose, and they start at the chin and they go down to your toes. And then who looks at the airway? You guys do all day long. All day. You're staring at that airway. So here are 4 things when you want to identify. You and your hygienist can do these 4 things. First, ask, has anyone ever told you that you snore? Okay. Another thing you can do, the Mallampati test, and I'll go in that in one of my next slides. Okay. If you see stains on the lingual tooth surfaces, it's probably because when they have the apneic event, their body is throwing up their stomach acid, and it's coming up and it's hitting the back of their teeth. And if they grind their teeth, those 4 things, you could focus on just those 4 things and help your patients tremendously. Look for those things. Now you may say, what's the Mallampati test? Mallampati is a scoring system that can be used. Excuse me, I don't know all the details of it, but it's a scoring system that you can use as a dentist or as a hygienist to find risk for sleep apnea. If you look here, if they score a 2 or a higher, they're basically at risk. Now I talked to Dr. Joe Shamus. He's a good friend of mine. I do lectures with him, and we talked just today, and he said something very profound. Why do you want to assess all of your patients? Because if you have a patient, recently, I guess not too long ago, there was a gentleman fell asleep at the wheel, and I'm in the Los Angeles area. He swerved across, and I think he killed 8 or 9 people. Okay. Now, his insurance company is going to be coming after deep pockets. If he was your patient and you asked him and you look at his throat all day long, and that insurance comes back and says, hey doc, how come you didn't talk to him about his sleep problem? Okay. So when you assess your patients, you're not only going to talk to them, if they say no to moving forward with getting testing and getting treated and so on and so forth, you're going to have them sign a release of liability form, because you're going to have it put down in your chart notes that you talked to that patient. All right, now let's move along here. Here's some things you can look for. We already talked about all these. Front desk questions you can add. I actually put I put my sleep questionnaire on here. This is the top part of my questionnaire. You may want to write these down. Have you ever been diagnosed with sleep apnea? Yes or no? If they have, get a copy of the diagnosis and then move them into treatment, for crying out loud. But the other ones are, If they answer yes to any one of these, puts them at risk for sleep apnea. Now remember, when you're assessing them, you don't know if they have sleep apnea. All you're looking for is risk, okay? Because you and I are not qualified to say you have sleep apnea. Nobody is. A test mixed with an MD interpretation is qualified to do that. But you as a dentist are not qualified to just say, oh, you have sleep apnea. In fact, I've told this before, and some of you may have heard this, but I had one dentist say to me, I can tell who has it. Just by looking, I can tell who has it. And I said to that dentist, I said, my wife was going to go in for an MRI, but why don't I just bring her to you? You have a gift. You could just tell us what's wrong. And he looked at me real funny, and then he started to chuckle because he got my point. My point was, how in the world do you know who has sleep apnea and who doesn't? Now, my assessment form is designed to find anyone at risk and to bring it up to the surface. Here's the second part of the assessment form. This top area here where it says, do you fall asleep while sitting and reading, while watching TV, while sitting inactive? That's called the Epworth Sleep Scale. And if they score a 6 or higher, boom, they're at risk. Come down to the next area. Please check any of the following symptoms you have. Excuse me. If they check off 2 or more, they are at risk. And by the way, any of the 3 areas can be independently put them at risk. Okay. So when you find you're going to have 15 patients or more in your practice, 3 of them will have sleep apnea. 3 patients times 4 days a week. If you're a typical dentist, that means 40 to 50 patients per month coming through your practice that have sleep apnea. And I don't even want to get into the numbers of those that are at risk. Okay. So you've got to identify them, assess and identify. Step number 3, this is a big one. Okay. You want to test them. Now let's talk about testing. Once you've identified the patient that has sleep apnea, you have to move them and get them tested. If they're not tested, you can't help them. Okay. And that's why I said if they don't move forward with any type of testing, then you need to have them sign that release of liability. Okay. So traditional sleep center testing, there's 2 ways to test. Traditional sleep center testing, if you see there, it's like a hotel-like setting. Okay. What you can't see is there's a camera in there. All right. And I did find out yesterday not yesterday, but I found out that a lot of women patients are really nervous about a man watching them. And a lot of the techs are men. Not all of them. In fact, I know some really good women techs. But I don't know how comfortable that looks to you or how exciting that is to you. But that's pretty... Does she look like she's ready to go or what? Look at all those wires. I don't remember how many it is. I think it's 18 to 22 wires. Whatever it is, it's a lot of wires. Okay. And it can be tremendously intimidating. Tremendously. It can be very inconvenient, very expensive. I was telling someone just the other day that not all of them, but your average sleep center, even with medical insurance coverage, the out-of-pocket costs typically start around $600, even with medical insurance covering. Okay. And usually what they're trying to do is their sleep doctor or somebody there is pushing CPAPs. Okay. Because they work with the CPAP provider and the CPAP provider makes sure and gets patients into their office for testing. And so it doesn't work out real well for a dental partnership in many cases. Now I do have some really good sleep centers that I work with, but and ultimately you end up with non-compliance with your patient. So this is what the CPAP looks like. I'll tell you a little story. My neighbor came over when we first moved down into the LA area. My neighbor came over and we live in almost a little cul-de-sac like thing. And he said, Rob, nice to meet you. I heard you deal in sleep. He says, I have sleep apnea and I don't wear my mask. I'll probably die because of it, and I stopped him and I said, you probably will. And he said, you're serious, aren't you? And I said, yes. Sleep apnea is a horrendous disease that wrecks lives and leaves families devastated with people killed all the time. And he said, but Rob, I can't wear that mask. If I want to be intimate with my wife, we have to both be on the Darth Vader page. It doesn't work. So I got him over to a dentist and he was able to get an appliance. It was actually really quite nice. I'm really excited for him. So here's the next thing. Home sleep testing. Is this effective? Does it work? It does, absolutely. Here, you'll find on the coasts and with many of the insurances now pushing into the interior of the United States, many of the insurances are requiring a home test before they'll even allow an in-lab study. An at-home test, it focuses, and I did say this to one dentist. He asked me, hey, how accurate are they? Listen, they are tremendously accurate, and I'll go over why in a second, but all they're going to do is identify sleep apnea and obstructive and central sleep apnea with some snoring, okay? That's what they're good for. If you have a patient that you think has insomnia or restless leg or something like that, which, by the way, 9 times out of 10, it's sleep apnea related, okay? But then send them to a lab. Otherwise, an at-home test is awesome. You can see the picture here. You can see the respiratory belt. It goes around the chest. That measures them breathing. Every time their chest rises and falls. You can see a nasal cannula, number 2 there. That measures the airflow every time they breathe. Even if they're mouth breathers, air will come in through the nose. Okay, and then you have the oximeter that goes on the finger. That measures 2 things. It measures the oxygen saturation levels and it measures your heart rate. And the little device in the middle, which is actually an older device, we have a new one that's black now. But the device in the middle, it takes all those things and combines them, and it tells you whether or not you have sleep apnea. This is what, when we use our test, this is what the results look like. Okay, you can see on there apnea. Recording time, 7 hours and 52 minutes. Flow evaluation time, 4 hours and 27 minutes. That's how long the nasal cannula was in. So this person who did this test, they must have pulled the cannula out of their nose because they actually had the device on for 7 hours and 52 minutes. They had their oximeter on for 7 hours and 41 minutes. But only 4 hours and 27 minutes covered the flow. But that's okay. That was enough time to show that this patient has an AHI of 27.1. Okay, so 27.1, you guys, that means 27, a little over 27 times per hour. This patient either stops breathing or does the erratic breathing and actually doesn't get any air for 10 seconds or longer. That's 270 seconds per hour. 270 seconds per hour. So you can see the oxygen desaturation levels there. 254 times this patient desaturated, and the saturation percents. This guy or gal, I don't remember if it was a guy or a gal, their lowest was 74% oxygen desaturation. Can I tell you a little something? Actually, I can. I'm the only one talking. Okay, so their lowest was at 74. If you go to the doctor and your oxygen desaturation or saturation level is at 90%, 89, 90%, you're going home with an oxygen tank. All right, so that's bad. Now you can see here, they took 3,539 breaths. They snored 448 times. And it shows their pulse, their average, their max, and so on. And then we have down at the bottom, this is our second page to the sleep test, a diagnosis. So when you work with us, we have a sleep doctor who does an interpretation of the sleep study. And he's board certified in sleep medicine. But he writes on there, he looks over the tests and says, okay, the findings were consistent with moderate obstructive sleep apnea, CPT code diagnostic code 327.23 based on an AHI of 27.1. And then he writes on there the treatment recommendations. And that's very helpful, but it's not absolutely necessary. If a patient has sleep apnea, you can help them. Okay. We can get more into that later, but if a patient has sleep apnea, you can help them. Okay. Next, let's talk about the AHI. We already went over this a little bit, and I'm not talking about tuna and going out to sushi. I'm talking about the apnea-hypopnea index. Okay. The three areas of sleep apnea are mild, where they have a 5 to 15. That means 5 to 15 times per hour they have an apneic event. And then moderate is actually, I typed it in there wrong. It's actually 16 to 30 times per hour. And then severe is plus 30. That means 31 or more. That means 31 more times or per hour they have apneic events going on, and it is tremendously terrible. Tremendously terrible. All right. So now with that in mind, let's talk about the third level here. Let's talk about treatment. Okay. So now you want to identify patients, and you have an idea, of how to identify them. Okay. What do you need to do? You need to identify them. Why do you need to identify them? Because if you don't, no one else will. And how do you identify them? Use an assessment form. Ask them the questions. Now, what do you need to do next? You need to test them. Why do you need to test them? Because you can't help them if you don't know if they have sleep apnea. And insurance won't cover it if you don't do a test on them. All right. So testing them helps you find out if they have sleep apnea. And then how do you test them? I highly encourage you to use at-home sleep testing. Okay. Next, what do you need to do next? You need to treat them. Okay. Now let's go into this and let's get into it. Treatment. I tell dentists, have a mask on hand and have an appliance on hand. I just pulled one appliance out of, there's 250 FDA approved oral appliances out there that you can use. And I chose one and just stuck it on there. But if you bring an appliance out and if you bring a mask out, your patients are going to be able to check for and decide for themselves. You can then say, hey, what do you think is best for you? What works for you, patient John Smith or Tina Lowe or whoever the patient is, and let them see. Let them talk to you about it. You want to be a provider that is going to make sure they're compliant. If they can't wear the mouthpiece, then put them in a mask. If they can't wear the mask, then put them in a mouthpiece. If they already have a mask, but they travel and they go camping, which most everyone does, then get them a mouthpiece. All right. So which would you want? Now, that's the first thing you want to do is find out which is best for them. Now, what the steps you want to do is first you want to take impressions, okay? And you want to do a bite registration. Just a normal, tell them to put their mouth right where they normally would and do a centric bite registration. Okay? Then on the next impression, you can see that little gauge right there. That's called a George gauge. All right? And you're going to have them protrude. That's a normal bite right there. And then you're going to have them protrude out as far as they can go. Okay? Fully protrusive bite registration. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take the two. And I tell dentists, now remember, this isn't a clinical training. This is so you can help treat your patients. There's plenty of ways to get clinical training out there. And I'm not your clinical trainer. Okay, I'm showing you how to implement this all into your practice to help your patients and help your practice. Okay, so if you use, let me go back here. If you use a device like that George gauge right there, I believe we sell those at Reveal for like $100 or maybe even a little more than that. I don't know what they are, but they're cheap. Okay, and what they do is they allow you to fully protrude out, mark it, and have a regular bite and mark it as well. And then you go, the labs that I talk to, they say, Rob, tell them to go right smack dab in the middle. And that way they're not protruded out so far that when they get that device, they're like, oh my goodness, I can't wear this. my jaw hurts too bad. It allows them to start slowly and gradually, okay? So that's how you're going to do it. Then you want to send those impressions and your directions onto the lab, okay? Send them to the lab. The lab's going to fabricate. There's plenty of labs out there. If you need a lab, please contact us. We have a really good set of labs we work with. You'll really like them. So call me, work with Marshall, work with the Reveal Solutions. And then last thing is you want to adjust it as necessary. Don't, please do your patient and yourself a favor, and do not do a one and done. Okay, take care of your patients. Adjust them as necessary. If they need to come in 10 times for an adjustment, come in. All right. Now, again, you could take an apnea class if you want to. Great. They're going to focus on the scientific part of it. This is all for the office, the billing, and so on and so forth. That's what this course is about. Okay. So take an apnea class. So remember, identify them, test them, and then treat them. And treat them is what you do next. And once you treat them, why do you treat them? Because you can put an appliance in that they'll actually wear. They may not wear a CPAP, but they might wear that mouthpiece, that appliance. Okay. And how do you do it? Take impressions, send them to the lab, give them the instructions, use something like a George gauge. Okay. The last thing I want to do, it's not really a step. I have 3 steps, but it is a step. Okay. So I guess we should have 4 steps on here. Let's get into it real quick here. Billing medical insurance. If you have a pen, you're going to want to write these things down. These are the codes you need to know. Okay. If you're doing a temporary appliance while their fixed appliance gets off to the lab, so you need something to put them in, 21085 is the appliance code or the billing code you need to use. E0486 is the DME billing code that you want to use for medical insurance for the actual appliance therapy. And then 21110, a lot of the dentists I work with, they do a morning repositioner, something it allows them to then, the repositioner, once they've had that appliance in, their fixed appliance in all night, then they may need something in the morning to pop in while they're in the shower that puts their jaw back to comfy or comfortable. And so those are the codes. Now remember, why do you want to bill medical insurance? Remember this EOB? This is why. Okay. If this dentist didn't bill medical insurance and just charged the patient, doing a huge disservice to the patient. Huge disservice. We're all being forced into having medical insurance, whether we want it or not, and that's not a discussion for today. We're all being forced into getting medical insurance. Why can't we use it? It's costing us an arm and a leg. Why can't we use it? All right. So I wanted to include one more EOB on here for you can see. Like this is for a cone beam CT scan. The insurance allowed $1,091.50. What is your insurance paying? Their dental insurance paying you $200 maybe. All right. So those codes. Hopefully you wrote those codes down. Medical insurance is really important for you to do. It was just changed in this month. Well, excuse me. If you're listening to this later, this is the month of October 2015, but it was changed October 1st, 2015, the first time since 1979. And you can see, just as is sort of what we can expect from our medical or our federal government, they added 68,000 codes. I guess they increased it from 16,000 to 68,000, excuse me. And most of them are silly. Okay. Some of our favorites we wanted to include on here. Now, if you've ever been struck by a turtle, guess what? You can finally get it covered. Okay. And they will cover, in some cases, contact with a dolphin if it's the initial encounter. And our personal favorite, if you have received a burn due to water skis being on fire, they have a coverage code for it now. See how silly those are? Medical insurance can be quite a process, but I want you to do it. It's absolutely necessary to help your patient. Now, if you can see this, this is a CMS 1500 form. They call it a HCFA. You can call it whatever you want, but it's a CMS 1500 health insurance claim form. That's why they call it HCFA. HICF. Okay. And this is what you'd use to bill a patient's medical insurance. And you can use what you want to do first is you want to submit a W-4 to all the insurances. Let them know who you are. That doesn't mean you're going in network with them. And please don't do that. Okay. Don't go in network. It's not a good game plan. All right. Submit a W-4 to all the insurances to let them know who it is. And then the next thing you want to do before you do anything with the patient, check their benefits and check for any necessary pre-authorizations. Okay. Next, submit your medical claim form, your 1500, with chart notes as necessary. And then you want to make sure and check receipt after 30 days. It's a long time they get to receive your stuff. Then you want to phone in at the 60-day and the 90-day mark to check the status. And after 90 days, you're probably going to want to spend significant time harassing them. Remember, if it gets denied or you want to appeal it or resubmit it, I mean, you want to appeal the denial or resubmit, do it often. Okay, and make sure you get paid in full. Some insurances, a lot of insurances are notorious for not. Okay, and then phone appeal if the patient was if the payment was partial, appeal it by phone. And if phone doesn't work, write it. But phone often and track everything. Okay, now if you see 15 patients a day, we already talked about this. 40% of them will be at risk. Actually, more than that. But I gave you a conservative number. 6 of your patients will be at risk. And 3 of them that are at risk will agree to do a home test. You guys, I've done this over and over and over again, and this is how it works. 3 of your patients will come back. 2 of them will have sleep apnea. And if you see patients 4 days a week, that means, 50% of them will move forward with care. That means you have 4 patients every week getting treated for sleep apnea. That's 15 to 16 patients every month you can help that'll move forward with care. It's time. They need you. Start now. You guys, seriously, dentists, take a little second and think about it. They need you. Their spouses need you. Okay? Their workplaces, they need you. Now, what would you do if you made $3,500 off of each patient for 15 patients every month? Imagine what kind of revenue that could do for you. What would you do with it? That's the question. Now imagine if you had 15 patients and their insurance paid you $11,316.50. By the way, you already saw that EOB. That is a real live payment amount. That you cannot expect that from every patient. No. But how many patients like that do you need? I'm showing you right now. You have 15 every month that you should be doing. Okay? What would you do with it? I'll tell you what you do with it. I already know. A lot of you dentists, what you do is you'd hire an associate and you'd focus more on sleep. Why? Because less back pain, better care. Not better care than you're currently doing, but it's easier to care. Would you buy a new house? Whatever you would do. If you want to go on a trip to Fiji, fine. Whatever it is. This is Marshall here in his Lamborghini. It's actually not his, it's his neighbor's. But he gets to drive it. That's pretty darn cool. What would you do with the extra income? Remember these steps. Identify your at-risk patients, test them, then treat them, then bill medical insurance. Can I tell you really quick on medical insurance? Please remember to bill the office visits. Okay? All right. You feeling a little overwhelmed? Do you need some help? We can help you. Okay, Reveal has put together 8 webinars along with 3 coaching calls. okay, to help you in your practice. Webinar number 1, we're going to help you screen and assess like an all-star. You're going to figure out how to assess and screen everybody. We're going to give you the proper forms to use. We're going to be able to help you so that you know what to say, how to say it. We'll give you scripts for it, but you're going to screen so that every patient that comes in, so those 12 patients that are at risk, you can find them. Then we're going to help you. We're going to provide an overnight pulse oximeter. That's sort of our secret sauce. And it's a great baby step for patients that go from screening and assessing to getting tested. It's a middle ground in between. Webinar number 3, we're going to help you find those at-risk patients and help you to know what to say and how to say it so that they say, okay, I'm ready. You're right, doctor. I have this issue. And now they're taking and they're going to accept that. Webinar number 4, we're going to teach you how to get every single patient that is at risk to get tested. I don't think there's an exact way to get 100% of them, but if you can get them, we're going to teach you how to do it. And I have a little bit of a secret sauce on that, so that because if you have 6 patients that are at risk, and if you get 6 patients tested, then your chances of getting 4 oral appliances out of those 6 patients is tremendous. But if you have 6 that are at risk and you only get 3 of them that'll test, you're getting 2, it's fine, but still, you see what I'm saying there? Webinar number 5, we're going to help you to understand the home sleep test so that your patients will feel totally comfortable going home with it. Number 6, we're going to help you with your appliances. We're going to provide a couple of labs actually are going to teach you on the webinar how to do the best impressions and to deliver the oral appliance so that when your patients get it, they're going to say, oh my gosh, you saved my life. Webinar number 7, we're going to teach you how to follow up with the patients and how to get paid for it. How do you get paid for follow-up visits? We'll show you. We're going to show you how to do it. And the last one, we're going to go over medical billing. We're going to teach you what to bill, how to bill it. What do you send in? What do you say to the insurances? We're going to go over all of that. And as I already said, you're going to get 2 bonuses, a couple of bonuses. You're going to get 2 overnight pulse oximeters that you can send out to your patients and hand them out like candy when patients are at risk. And we'll give you all the forms and all the scripts. We value this. It's actually higher value than we have on here. It's well over $4,000, but even if you $3,990, what we're going to do for you is we're going to help you so that you get it, and we're going to get you started at $1,997. You don't see that on your screen here because I haven't put it on yet, but I want you, so you want this in your practice. I know you do. Let us take the overwhelm away. Let us walk you through it, and we'll fast track it for you. If you want all of your webinars in one night, no problem. And then your coaching calls, you want those all in the same day, no problem. We will work through so you get exactly what you need to take your patients to care. Okay? $1,997 is all we're charging right now. Please, $1,997 is a drop in the bucket to what you can do to help your patients and increase your practice revenue. So here's what I want you to do now. If you are overwhelmed and you do want our help, we want to help you. Go to your email and type in marshall@revealsolutions.biz. And I want you to put in the subject line, please help. Then we'll have someone call you. We'll get your credit card information. We'll charge you, and we'll get you set up for the webinars and the trainings. All right? We appreciate you coming today. Thanks for joining us. I hope you learned exactly what you need to do. Get started. Email Marshall at marshall@revealsolutions.biz. Put in there, please help in the subject line. We'll call you. We'll get your credit card. We'll get you started for $1,997. Thanks. Have a great day. We look forward to talking to you soon, and we'll see you on the next webinar.